Good morning and welcome to this Tuesday, March 14th session of the OBX Wave Report. I am Robert Scribbler, your reporter on all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And for today, I've had the opportunity to do some more special reports because it's a little bit of a silver lining because I'm a little bit under the weather. I've got the sniffles, maybe a low-grade fever. It's been that way since late Sunday. And I've learned from experience that you do not want to get into cold water when you have even just the beginnings of a sickness. I got hypothermia once when I was a kid, when I was in like an early onset of, I guess, a flu or something like that, and jumped into the water and it was just not a good situation. So I'm not going to get into the cold 49 to 50-degree water down here at Jeanette's Pier when I'm fighting off something. Um, I'm not really bad off, but I'm just doing all the things, drinking my fluids, taking the vitamins, taking good care of myself, getting extra rest. So no need to worry about little old me. I think I will be okay. We will get back into the water soon, but the silver lining is that we've had the opportunity to do more talk on weather and climate, which is always good, particularly since we're over here on the coastline. We're very concerned about climate change and the effects of burning fossil fuels on both the glaciers and on the extreme weather that we're experiencing more and more around the globe as people talk about this thing they call the new normal. I'm not really sure. I've never really liked that term, new normal. New normal is like seems almost too much like normalization to me. It's abnormal. It's not good, I guess. I mean, in some ways, we don't want to freak out too much. Don't want to get too scared, but at the same time, we want to recognize that things are changing. Things are getting a little bit rougher out there, and the climate system a bit choppier. We're getting more extremes. And this only as the Earth has warmed about 1 point, I say only, 1.1 to 1.2 degrees Celsius above 19th century averages, according to NASA GISS and the global climate monitors. Although 1.1 to 1.2 degrees Celsius is actually not a small thing when it comes to the larger climate system. It's about a quarter of the difference. It's equivalent to about a quarter of the difference between the Holocene period in which human civilization grew up and the last ice age, but on the side of hot. So you've got about a quarter of the difference between an ice age and the Holocene on the side of hot. So basically a quarter of the way to, I don't know, what would you call it, a heat age? But in any case, that 1.1 to 1.2 degrees Celsius warming can have some pretty profound impacts on the climate system, as climate scientists continue to point out. And I encourage you to listen to the scientists, not, you know, weirdos or quacks or people who hate science or people who deflect from the science for political or reasons or for short-term monetary gain. Um, we're here to try and help everyone, and that includes everyone who lives on the coast, live a better life and have a better future. All right, so let's get into the OBX wave report for March the 14th. I'm going to look at the some of the weather features. We have been talking about this atmospheric river in California. I did do a special report just a little while ago on that. There's a lot of reporting going on the atmospheric river happening in California right now. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's weather whiplash between drought and flood is definitely a climate change related thing, and California is kind of right there on the edge when it comes to it. California is just geographically in a location that's getting both of the extremes, even as the Southwest tends to trend more toward drought over the long term. Um, And I just do want to say when we talk about impacts, I want to also talk about solutions. And clean energy is a primary mitigator and solution to the climate crisis. The faster we get to a 100% clean energy system and net zero carbon emissions, the better off everyone's going to be. So we do have solutions to the climate crisis. It's not just something that we're all sitting here helpless to endure. Um, we're not inevitably facing any kind of doom, but we don't want to allow bad actors to write doom into our future. I guess that's a good way of saying it. But and okay, so we've got some impacts in California right now, and we've got a actually a really strong nor'easter out here off of Nantucket. I'm looking at a water vapor image that shows actually total precipitable water image. It also shows winds and things like that. So out here off of Nantucket, for example, we got wind speeds in the 47 mile per hour sustained range. And this nor'easter is actually strengthening still off of Nantucket, bringing some pretty severe impacts to the US Northeast. Here in the Outer Banks, we've got some strong offshore winds, tall swells, possibly big barrels. We're going to get down to the coastline and do some wave observations later today. It's right now I say, let's see, the title here is Big, Cold, and Sunny. So yeah, we've got big waves, it's cold, and it's sunny. And we've got strong northwest winds as well. So we might have some barrels out there, and I don't know, we might go on a barrel hunt for you guys and see if we can get some video of some barrels for you guys later today. Hopefully I won't be too sniffly and under the weather to, you know, not go out and explore for you guys and get you guys some good videos of waves here at the coastline. All right, so looking at the lower 48 through NOAA's geocolor composite. For some reason, I always have trouble saying those words. A geocolor composite. You see, I say it again and it's pretty quick, but say it fast 5 times, right? Geocolor composite, geocolor composite. Okay, I'm not going to do it 5 times, but nonetheless a little bit of a tongue challenger, maybe not a tongue twister. In any case, yep, we've got the next most recent impulse of severe weather coming in through California off that atmospheric river. Thankfully, in the future, it does look like the atmospheric river is going to point a little bit more down toward Mexico. So maybe California will get a respite. Let's hope. We've had a just massive series of storms here for California this year. And then we've got the nor'easter just off the coast, still having that like very discernible eye in I don't know if eye is the right word, but just cyclonic opening in the satellite picture here. It almost looks like a hurricane. It's not. So let's not freak out about it. But it is kind of bombing out. It's a pretty strong storm now and might even get to the lower 970 millibar range. So that's getting into pretty gnarly storm range, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Here in the Outer Banks, clear, and we've got some wintry weather over hovering around the Great Lakes region and west into North Dakota and Minnesota. And we've got this gathering of moisture over by the Gulf, and we'll talk about some of that stuff later. So in the infrared colorized cloud tops, we can provided by Levi Cohen over here at Tropical Tidbits. Check out Levi. He's going to start waking up and start doing some tropical talk. I wonder if he'll talk about the atmospheric river. It could be interesting since the hurricane hunters are getting out there and starting to investigate atmospheric rivers coming off the Pacific these days, which is, I think, really kind of a good thing and cool in a way, and also very helpful for public safety and emergency management and extreme weather forecasting. So kudos to the hurricane hunters and to Levi Cohen. Yeah, so we got this atmospheric river coming in for California. That's very visible with those very bright red cloud tops over California right now. Got some snowy weather running in through south central Canada, north central US, and the nor'easter up here in the northeast, and some moisture in association with those much warmer than normal Gulf water temperatures and higher atmospheric moisture loading. Okay, so let's get down to the national. Whoa, got out into the Atlantic Ocean here. I'm going to refresh this to make sure we're up to date. So we got some cold advisories. It was pretty cold here in the Outer Banks last night. It got down to around 38 degrees. It was pretty cold. here for the Outer Banks. I know some of you guys up north are like 38, that's warm. It feels cold here because it's damp. So, but in any case, yeah, it got pretty cold and we had some frost and freeze warnings out to the west of us. And then here in the Northeast, we've got these storm warnings in association with that strong nor'easter and winter weather advisories up all over the place with some nasty winter weather associated with that nor'easter up to the east. And then out west, the main event being California and the atmospheric river with all those flood advisories just lighting up, turning most of northern and central California green. And we got winter advisories in the mountains as we get those heavy snows in association with that atmospheric river. Saw earlier that the recent atmospheric river event might bring between 4 and 8 feet of snow to some of the mountain ranges. That's just nuts. So yeah, big weather event here for California again in association with the atmospheric river. All right, let's get on down to the coastline and give you guys some of the reports from the wave monitors. And we're going to start out at Jeanette's Pier with right now waves in the range of 4 to 7 feet. Winds out of the west northwest at 28 miles per hour. That's a very strong offshore flow. We got the primary swell coming in at 13 seconds at 5 feet, coming in from the east northeast, very direct to the coastline, lining up nicely, providing those 4 to 7 foot waves there. And the secondary swell is coming out of the north at 6 seconds. I'm sorry, air temperatures right now at 43, pretty cold, but not as cold as it was earlier at about 38. Um, Ocean water temperatures in the range of 50 degrees. This is colder than it was. It's expected to be sunny and breezy today with a high of 49 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's pretty much the case all up and down the Outer Banks, high of about 49 predicted pretty much everywhere. Heading down to Rodanthe, waves are also in the range of 4 to 7 feet primary swell. I'm sorry, winds out of the northwest at 28 miles per hour, so very strong offshore flow. I don't know, might be getting some barrels here. Could be a little bit too radical for barrels. We'll see. Um, Primary swell coming in at 13 seconds at 5 feet, also out of the east northeast, and secondary swell out of the north at 6 seconds. Low was also in the upper 30s down there at Rodanthe. And right now, it looks like temperature is about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperature is colder at Rodanthe. Interesting. 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Weather predictions for today: sunny, windy, high of 49, as I mentioned earlier. And then heading down, just want to give a brief observation for Avon. Worth noting Avon's waves right now in the range of 5 to 7 feet. As we head on down to Buxton, and Buxton, once again, the big wave spot for the Outer Banks, with waves in the range of 9 to 10 feet, not as big as yesterday at the 10 to 12 foot range in association with a or nor'easter that was developing offshore, then heading off to the northeast. The northeast, you guys right now are getting that nor'easter that started out here off the Outer Banks, but it was not as strong for us as it is for you guys. So right now, 9 to 10 foot waves at Buxton. Winds out of the northwest at 24 miles per hour, which is offshore. That southeast cant to the coastline, bringing that northwest wind pretty much in line with that swell. So we might have some big barrels down there at Buxton. Been talking about potential big barrels at Buxton for days now. We'll see if we get any video from the local surfers. I don't know if Brett has gotten out into the cold. It is very cold. So my sympathies for any surfer that does not want to get into the crazy strong wind and cold air. Any case, primary swell coming out of the east northeast at 13 seconds, 5.5 foot. For some reason, there's just tends to be a bigger swell there at Buxton. Buxton just seems to get it. And then secondary swell also coming in at 6 seconds at Buxton there. Air temperatures right now 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures getting closer to 60, but still colder than it has been at Buxton at 57 degrees Fahrenheit for your ocean water temperatures. Warmer though, more appealing to me after having been out in the cold water at, like let's see, I think the coldest I got in was 46. That was cold. Cold water. But in any case, yeah, 57 degrees water temperature at Buxton. And weather forecast for today, basically the same as everywhere else. Sunny, windy, high 49. Okay, so let's go ahead and broaden back out, talk about weather and climate, some features that do affect all the coastlines. And right now in the Arctic, we've got much warmer than normal European and Asian continent, producing a kind of a launching pad for warm air invasions of the Arctic. Here on the North American side, we actually have more contiguous cold with some exceptions. We still have some warmer than normal anomalies scattered about the North American side of the Arctic as well. And we'll get into that as we look at the weather, the temperature anomaly graphic provided by Karsten Haustein, who's been doing this for years and years and years. Kudos to you, Karsten, for all of your good work on providing the graphical information on climate. And I just want to show you this craziness over here. It's just, yeah, Europe, Africa, near the Sahara, central, say West Central Asia near the Caspian Sea, North Central Asia near the Arctic Ocean, in Siberia near the Yamal Peninsula, China, some southeastern China, and then northeastern Asia here near Kamchatka. Just crazy temperature anomalies here. And I was looking at some climate maps just for tendencies, just to get an understanding of what the tendencies have been. And it's been warmer than normal over Asia and Europe in February, and this appears to have extended into March, which might be an indicator for fire season out there. Let's hope things aren't too crazy for fire season out in Asia and Europe. It is also worth noting that the Antarctic is rather warmer than normal as we start to head into southern hemisphere fall, and with a lot of warm air invasions of Antarctica. Did I say Arctic? If I said Arctic in the southern hemisphere, I meant Antarctic, so correcting myself as I go here. But yeah, much warmer than normal in the Antarctic, and it's worth noting that the Antarctic is the hot spot for today in the global environment, and of course the global temperature anomaly for the 1981 to 2010 reference period is about zero point 0.7 degrees Celsius above normal, which is about 1.2 degrees Celsius above the 1880s average. So much warmer than normal across the globe, and Antarctica being the hot spot. Here in the US, we've got some cold air displaced from the Arctic still lingering over parts of the US. We'll see where that's expected to go as we look into the longer term predictions for the 8 to 14 day period. And then just for the Arctic generally, we've got some hot spots scattered about with some more warm air invasion primarily coming in off of parts of Siberia now, and some lingering above normal temperatures for the Arctic over parts of the Canadian archipelago, Baffin Bay, and just areas just north of the North American continent. All right, so looking at the lower 48, where we expect storminess over the coming days. California is again the hot spot. It's worth noting that these 7-day forecasts have been tamping down a little bit day after day in the NOAA QPF monitors. So and it's also worth noting that the stream of the atmospheric river does look like it's going to start pointing more to the south here toward Mexico. And if that is the case, then California might get a bit of a respite. We'll see. It does appear that we do have a tendency for storminess along the Gulf region, some tendency for storminess over the Rockies and parts of the Great Lakes, and a tendency for nor'easter formation over the near East Coast region of the North Atlantic, and this has been the case for days and days and weeks, and appears to still be the case. And then as we get into the Storm Prediction Center by NOAA, we do have some potential for severe thunderstorms as we get into day 3, but for today and tomorrow, not too much in the way of severe thunderstorms expected. But then as we get into, let's see, today is Tuesday, Wednesday, as we get into Thursday, there is some severe thunderstorm potential for parts of the Gulf Coast region and near Texas and Oklahoma. So you guys, please stay alert to that. Still a slight risk, so nothing too crazy in the convective analysis as yet. All right, so let's get down to the models and talk about the nor'easter over the U.S. Northeast now, producing what looks like some very heavy snows and strong winds for parts of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, and Maine. So lots of the Northeast under the gun right now with a pretty severe nor'easter. Right now, 979 millibars, big old swooping front connecting moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, parts of the North Atlantic, sucking it into that storm system. And then we have another storm off the atmospheric river barreling into California. I'm going to go ahead and advance this model. This model is actually not too well loaded right now, but let's just go ahead and advance it. I do want to show you how this low progresses. So we got the low expected to get into the lower to middle 970 millibar range before it heads on off the coast. So that's a pretty strong nor'easter. It's expected to linger through the day today and into Wednesday, and then just slowly head on offshore as we get into the day on Wednesday. And then that big pulse of precipitation for California is expected to spill over the Rockies and into the central US as we get on into Thursday, as another strong frontal system fires up in the central US on Thursday in association with some of that predicted severe weather potential for Oklahoma and Texas as we get into late Thursday and then into Friday. And then the front and low pressure system anchoring it near the Great Lakes sweeps eastward. And I think that's it for this model. So let's just go ahead to the previous model. And I just do want to show you the progression of this front as we get on into Friday. So for the Outer Banks, we're going to have a general period of calming, and the waves will tend to be smaller over the next few days. And then as we get into Friday, we get some strong southwest winds and some warmer temperatures, and probably a swell being driven up from the south. So not likely great waves for most of the beaches with those southwest winds, but I don't know, we might still get something. I've been looking at some of the wind models, and it looks like on Friday we might have like near gale force gusts and or even stronger out of the southwest. So that could be really interesting. I was thinking about going surfing on Friday, given the warmer temperatures predicted, but strong winds are not super appealing, especially from the southwest. But nonetheless, we might still get out there and get some surfing, especially if I'm feeling better. But yeah, severe weather possibly along the Gulf Coast into Friday in association with this front as it approaches the East Coast. And then that severe weather heading off toward the north and east, through the Florida Panhandle, parts of North Carolina, and then sweeping offshore into Saturday as the front moves offshore, and the low pressure gets caught way up here in eastern Canada as the front moves on off. And I just do want to advance this model and show where the front goes. It kind of stalls out here over the Gulf Coast region, get another cold high pressure system over the US East, and then on the backside, so this is where I wanted to get to you guys in the model. We get this stalled front that appears to tap into some of that energy from that warmer than normal Gulf of Mexico, and then we get this coastal low in the 990 millibar range that looks pretty gnarly as it heads on up the U.S. East Coast. Now this looks more like a classic nor'easter. Nothing too crazy strong when it comes to millibars in the low pressure, but just overall looks like a pretty intense storm system with possible extreme weather along the coast and severe snows getting into the mountain region. This on Wednesday, not of this week, but of next week in the model. And then, we're in grain of salt territory, so we will see if that model remains in its prediction of a nor'easter by the middle of next week. If it does, we'll have a big event for the U.S. East Coast. This storm intensifying as it heads on north and then out to sea in the 980 millibar range. So again, nothing like major bomb cyclone-ish, but this still could be a pretty powerful nor'easter with some intense storms and possible intense snows for the mountain regions. It is worth noting that we do see a continued progression of storms in the global forecast system model for California. And yeah, seems like it just does continue. So I'm not sure about the atmospheric river um, dying out quite yet for California. Although later into the models, it does seem like California does get a bit of a respite. We'll see. But for now, California is definitely under the gun for that influx of moisture coming from the atmospheric river and the 11th atmospheric river to strike California at this time. Okay, so let's get into our wave forecast. I know those of you who are wave watchers are waiting for my wave forecast. We've got the tools necessary to predict the waves, and we're going to do it for you guys here using Earth Null School. And right now we've got waves in the range of about 7 to 8 feet in the near offshore environment. Let's kind of take a few. Oh, looks like 7 to 9 maybe in the near offshore environment here on the Outer Banks for today. Got those northwest winds coming in, but we got an easterly swell, and that could be a recipe for big barrels here in the Outer Banks. For tomorrow, winds, those northwest winds continue on the backside of that big old strong low pressure system off Maine, still affecting our area, helping to bring in those strong northwest winds. And with those northwest winds coming in, we're going to get that swell orienting more toward the north. So as the angle of the swell gets more and more northward, the size of the wave striking the beach will tend to get smaller and smaller. It is worth noting, though, that the offshore waves, near offshore waves, are still going to be pretty tall in the range of 6 to 7 feet. But I think generally the waves will tend to fall off as the angle of the swell moves more toward, moves more from like the east northeast to like north. And then so that's for the day on Wednesday. And then as we get into the day on Thursday, the storm system moves further offshore. The angle of the swell starts to get more of a northeastward component, and that looks nicer. I don't know. I might get out into the surf. Let's look at the winds. Yeah, much calmer as the high pressure starts to build in. Still cold, with a general northwesterly flow. Let's see. Let's look at air temperatures. This temperatures. Boop. Yeah, still cold. In the 40s, yuck. Excuse me. Yeah, not too great. As far as air temperatures go, cold. Maybe I won't risk it considering the fact that I'm still a little bit under the weather with the sniffles. But nonetheless, looking a lot better with that swell orienting more toward the northeast at a 4 foot, 4 to 5 feet, maybe translating to the coastline in the 2 to 3 foot range. Could be kind of glassy there with those calmer conditions on Thursday. So for those of you guys who want to brave the cold on Thursday, go for it. It might be a lot calmer. And then as Friday rolls around, we get those strong southerly winds. Um, and starting out not too crazy, but I did look at some of the monitors, some of the local monitors, and as we get into the afternoon, we might get like 40, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts in some locations. So it could be crazy strong winds with the approach of that front from the west. So the winds coming out of the southwest, changing the swell orientation to the south. So your south-facing beaches will be larger, probably rough though, with those strong southwest winds. We might find some nice, calm well, nice, smaller, well-shaped waves on these facing beaches if we're good at finding just the right angle and some nice little barrels. But with those strong winds, it's possible that just most of those waves might get blown out as we get into the day on Friday. So we'll just have to see. Looks like swells in the near offshore environment expected in the range of 3 to 4 feet, but potential for those swells to get blown out with those strong winds on Friday. We'll have to see. We might find a beach or two where the waves still tend to come in and break and they're still rideable, but we'll have to see. We'll see if we even get out there to the coast on Friday. And then as we get into the day on Saturday with those strong southwest winds, ahead of the front, that southwest swell picks up, get pretty big and gnarly. And this actually on the other side of the front in the 11 a.m. hour with the front sweeping through. But I just, let's back this up. I want to show you these strong southwest winds just ahead of this front here. It's pretty crazy. Um, yeah, so gale force southwest winds sustained. So you're looking at gusts in the range of 40 to 50 miles an hour, possibly stronger in some locations ahead of this front from the southwest. So pretty strong front, big old high pressure system out here in the North Atlantic helping to reinforce those southwest winds. and that strong southwest swell. Now, I'm actually curious how strong that high pressure is. Eh, not crazy strong, but big. Big, broad, high pressure system out here in the North Atlantic. Yeah, big, broad, high pressure system out in the North Atlantic. I actually, as you pull out, it doesn't look that big in comparison, but still a big old thing. And with large swells in the near offshore environment, let's get back to the 11 o'clock hour in the range of about 10 to 12 feet for the south facing beaches and looks like 8 feet for the north facing beaches, but with that swell orientation moving from the southwest to the northeast, a lot of those swells getting blown offshore for the more northerly beaches and the east facing beaches. All right, so thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report. We've provided you guys with a pretty comprehensive analysis on waves, weather, and climate today. It's big and cold out there, but there might be some really good waves to be had if you're ready to brave the elements of March. 4 to 10 feet, and Buxton again reigns supreme as the big wave spot with 9 to 10 foot waves. And as I always do at the end of my OBX wave reports, I encourage you guys to please do everything you can to help speed the clean energy transition away from fossil fuel burning and toward wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles. These are the replacement technologies that we do have right now for fossil fuels, and we can mass deploy them. We can have a much better life. We can defend our coastlines. We can tamp down the impacts of climate change that are not inevitable because they are directly tied to fossil fuel burning, which is not necessary. Um, so yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna counter the doomist messaging and the denier messaging, and we're gonna continue to beat the drum for clean energy, which is just a much better future for everyone, including the people here on the coastline and inland, and the people living everywhere. Because we're a wave report of we the people, not for oligarchs, not for people who want to spread misinformation or drum up your anger or hate or do all those things to try and make a profit. We're not here for that. We're here to help spread the good. So please join me and my best to you all. For those of you who are out there going surfing, tear it up, guys. Hope to see you out there when I feel better. So thank you for joining me once again.